Hello, hello, and welcome to another Zepto Connect virtual fireside chat. I'm Susie Slingsby, the head of sales and relationships here at Zepto, and I'm lucky enough to be your host today. So, thanks so much for joining for what should be a terrific session. We've got two fabulous expert voices who's going to join us very shortly. But before we start, I'd like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land I'm on here in Lennox Head in the Northern Rivers, New South Wales, the Bundjalung people, and recognise their ongoing connection to the lands, waters, skies, and communities of this region. And I'd like to extend that acknowledgement and respect to all of the lands where you're all joining from today. So, we're all here today to discuss the impact and potential of real-time payments in the world of superannuation, contributions, and payroll. Very, very topical at the moment. But first up, I'm just going to have a little bit of housekeeping. Our events are best when you all participate, and we love to engage with us and chat along with us. So you're going to see some icons on the top right of your screen. There's a chat box represented by speech icons, and you can post general comments and praise for the lovely speakers that you've got here today, whatever you like. Below that is a Q&A icon, and that's where you can pop your questions you'd like me to ask the panel. We'll be monitoring that feed during the session, and we'll ask as many questions as we can along the way. Pro tip, if someone puts a question in and you think, that's fantastic, I wish I had asked that, you can upvote it by clicking on the up arrow beneath the specific question. So please feel free at any time to start popping those questions in for the channel, and we'll keep our eyes out. And feel free to put any comments and shout outs and emojis in the chat channel. So it's time to meet the talent today. So the real-time payments paradigm, it's certainly coming. And no doubt, I'd say most of the people here on the call will know that from the 1st of July 2026, employees will have to pay their employee super at the same time as their salary and wages. So as we all know, traditionally, there's been a few horror stories of companies going down the drain, superannuation hasn't been paid. That certainly will not be happening going forward. So I was at the Australian Payroll Summit in Brisbane just a couple of weeks ago, and this was not surprisingly a very, very hot topic. And there was a few groans in the room when they were talking about people's readiness. So there's a fair bit of work to be done in a number of places. And also what's happening in December last year, the governor of the RBA confirmed that a target date of 2030 has been set for the retirement of BECS, which is Australia's legacy payments infrastructure. And the transition, we're actually calling that Brexit. So if you hear us talking about Brexit, that's what we're referring to. And the transition across to the real-time payments reality of MPP, or the new payments platform. So the starter's pistol has well and truly been fired for the payments modernisation. The race is on, and there's plenty of opportunity for those who want to embrace it. So the people we've got today to help us talk through all of this are Anne White, who is the director of AusEddy. Hello, Anne.
Hi, Susie.
And Paul Orford, who is our compliance product manager at Workforce Solutions at ReadyTech. So, hi, Paul. So, everyone, give them all some emojis and welcome them to the stage. Paul is the director of Digital Service Provider Australia and New Zealand, DSPANS, the non-profit industry association representing the world-class business software sector in Australia and New Zealand. And Anne was actually previously a director of DSPANS as well. Paul is also the creative force behind the Payroll Friday Funnies newsletter, which is always good giggle, always has a few dad jokes in there as well. So to subscribe to that, I think we're going to drop that into the channel if you're interested as well. So today we're probably going to be on for about 40-45 minutes, but if there's the chat still going, we may go a little bit longer. But to get us started, we're actually going to drop a poll in, and we'd love you all to answer this poll. How ready is your business for Payday Super from July 2026? The options, we haven't started planning yet. We're getting there. We've started. What's Payday Super? That's what I've dialed in today. So we'll give everyone a few seconds to answer, and then we'll pop the results on screen. Okay, I know it's going to be happening in the background, so I might keep going while that's happening. So let's kick off. Anne and Paul, thought we might start with an icebreaker, and you may need to go back in your memory banks a little way for this one. Can you remember your first proper job that you were paid for and how you were paid for it? And Anne, I'm going to start with you on this one.
Yeah. Thanks very much, Susie. You did forewarn me about this. I had to do some thinking about that. My first job was when I finished my science degree at Monash. They employed me as a research assistant in the chemistry laboratories, and I think they paid me by cheque.
That sounds about right. And there's still quite a few checks coming around in the ecosystem. Not for too much longer, but there you go. Good job. What about you, Paul?
So my first job was a pizza delivery driver, and I got paid in cash, and my pay slips were virtually handwritten. I think he had a template item that he filled in, but they were very much handwritten. So, yeah.
I like them.
Not many people getting paid cash anymore, though.
No, there's a few rules around that in a few places these days. It was interesting. I was thinking about this, and I think my first job, and I was technically paid. I was 8 years old, and I used to work in the takeaway next to my dad's office after school. They'd put a milk crate up for me, and I would take the money over the counter. Wasn't flipping burgers or anything. And they used to pay me in lollies, which, when you think about it now, how atrocious does that sound? An 8-year-old working on top of a milk crate, getting paid in lollies. But it was the first currency that made me think maybe working wasn't so bad. So there you go, one of each: lollies, cash, and checks. So let's get into the.
I'm going to ignore the compliance factors there, Susie.
It was a long time ago, Paul, a very, very long time ago. So let's talk about what we came to talk about, super and payroll today. So the on-demand economy and consumer expectations for things to happen instantly are at an all-time high. It's all about instant gratification. Are we seeing this impact payroll in terms of employee expectations around how and when they're getting paid? Paul, we'll start with you on that one.
I look at this in regards to sort of what happens at home on payday. So in my household, we've obviously got a lot of direct debits coming out the day after payday and those types of things. And until the money clears, there's always a level of stress within the household. So sometimes when pay is run late, you don't necessarily know when it's going to clear, and sometimes it doesn't clear until extremely late in the evening. So it definitely does impact employees on payday around when those things happen. So
it's true, and there's probably different workforces, different industries that have got different thoughts and meanings on that as well. And Anne, I know that you talk to a lot of people around frequency of payment as well, and are you finding that the expectations are changing?
Look, it's it really is something. I mean, as an employer, just in answering your first question, we get queries from staff. My pay is not in my bank account. Where is it? And the money's gone out of our bank account, of course, and it's being distributed from BECS and everything to other banks who have their own issues associated with it, apart from the BECS system itself. And of course, they're getting the delivery, and they're complaining. They're saying to me, I need to have it in the bank because I've got mortgage payments coming out against it, right? So, the current system is erratic and unpredictable. I mean, money eventually gets there, but I'm just saying most people these days are expecting a much higher performance on that than the system is currently providing.
Yeah, absolutely. You think about today's a perfect example. We're about to go into a 4-day weekend. Clearing across BECS, you've got to take into consideration that none of those are working days, so it's going to take quite some time for the payments to clear. I suppose we've been using a few acronyms already, talking about BECS and MPP. So for those people who may not be familiar with all of it, Paul, do you want to give us a quick 101 on the difference?
Yeah, so BECS has been around forever. So it's built on technology that is quite old, and the banks go off and historically go off and talk to each other around about 6 times a day. So they go off and they pick up great big files and send them in between each other. But there's also a tree-like structure behind BECS whereby generally the major banks all talk, but then you have building societies and other banks that sort of sit underneath the major tier one banks. So sometimes if your employer's with a building society, it needs to go off and talk to its tier one bank before it talks to another tier one bank that might then go and talk to an employee's building society that's there underneath it. So that's where all of these delays happen with the BECS system. And it also means that if, let's go off and say that someone processes payroll and they just miss one of those interchange times, okay, it means that the talking between the banks doesn't go off and occur for another 4 hours or that type of thing. So they do have sort of settlements at sort of 6:30, 9 o'clock, 10:30 at night to go off and make sure that they all do get there. But that's where all of the different delays happen with BECS. Also with those interchanges, the banks then move the money between themselves, generally only once a day. But as we start moving into the new payments platform, the messages are real time between any bank that is on the new payments platform. So, and as those messages push around, okay, the money between the banks is also moving at the same time. So it does go off and mean that things can go off and happen really as fast as the electronic infrastructure behind it. So it's going from being hours of messages pushing around to really just being a couple of seconds between things being sent and things arriving. So that's sort of where it's sitting at the moment. I know Anne's been doing a little bit more in the space and has been pushing some things around with Super already. So
yes, we're very excited to talk to you about that, Anne, very soon. That is for sure. Thank you. That was very helpful, Paul. So, Anne, the government has announced both payday superannuation payments in 2026 and the Brexit strategy as well. So how are these reforms set to impact how businesses pay wages and superannuation? Because it's quite the change.
Oh, look, and I think a little bit of history here is probably important too, where we've come from, where we're going to. On the superannuation angle, the handling of getting information about each of the super payments to the super funds was solved back in 2014 when employers were able to send the data through the gateway network to the super funds so that the super funds got their data in a standard format. Fantastic, right? So we've had that for 10 years now. And what hasn't changed, of course, is the payment handling. But just on relative to that, we need to sometimes look back and see how far we've actually come. I had a client back then in 2014 who had about 450 employees and had to pay about 88 funds, I think it was. It was over 80 funds. And it took them 2 staff 3 days a month to pay the super because of the complexity of paying by check and by BPay and remittance in this format here and remittance in that format there. When they implemented SuperStream and paying through an AVA file, they got that 3 days a month down to 10 minutes. So needless to say, employers were absolutely thrilled with that. Step 1. Step 2, what about the money? And this is where the big change is coming now, is that in order for the funds to match that really fast remittance coming through to them in data format quickly, they need the money quickly. And that's where we have problems with the existing systems at the moment, not just with the BECS system, but the people who are handling in the centre there, handling the money for distribution. They also are operating in different ways, and that's causing delays.
Well, I think it's true when you think about the efficiencies you can gain there, both from resourcing, like multiple people over multiple days to get this job done. It's not very enticing. And also the power of matching the data and the payments together. That's going to bring a lot of efficiencies. Paul, you look like you're about to say something.
Yeah, I was to say the major item in this space is going to be for the employers themselves is going to be around the error handling. So when the payments go and the messages get there, everything's fine and it works beautifully. But when something goes wrong, the BEC system goes off and creates bigger delays in the process. So if there's a problem with someone's super fund, the super fund can't accept the money, they can't match who it's against, the money comes back. But generally with the BEC system, so you're then having to go off and wait sort of weeks before you actually know that a superannuation payment's failed, and before you can start going off and start doing anything about it. So being able to go off and get these transmissions in effectively real time, it means that people in the payroll space are going to be able to go off and start acting upon failures a lot sooner, and they're going to be able to avoid super surcharges because they didn't know, they didn't get updated details, those types of things. So
yeah, it makes a lot of sense, and it's interesting. Like as a layman, when we first started talking about this and looking into the superannuation space, I was surprised how many days it even took to get it across from one place to the other. Like the whole process is so much longer than it needs to be. So there's certainly some efficiencies with real-time messaging to know within the second or 2 seconds max whether there has been a problem along the way. That's certainly very powerful.
And Susie, I think we need to recognise that the players in this processing, some of the players in the middle, some of the clearing houses are actually holding the money, making some money on the money before they pass it on. All right. So their business model is such that they work on the daily basis that the BEC system has delays in it. And some companies are being asked to pay their super up to 10 days in advance because of this. And so realistically, instant payments straight through is going to make a huge difference as far as the speed of processing. But it's also going to have a reasonably disruptive impact on some of the players in the market.
I'm seeing emojis coming through thick and fast on that as well, which is true, that there may be some commercial models that are being recalculated in the background as we speak. So I think, as we know, a lot of people are utilising platforms for these services today. So, Paul, what sort of flow-on impacts do these reforms have on the platforms that businesses are relying on to process their payroll and super today? Because once, as we've said, it's quite a departure from how they do it.
Yeah, so the players in the space are obviously needing to start working through how to transmit the information. There is definitely going to be some transitional items as people start to have a mix of real-time payments and people still using the old BSB and account number type of items. So it's also the readiness of some of the banks in that space, and they're still working through how they're going to go off and deal with things like the approvals of items pushing through. So in some businesses, you upload something to the bank, and as soon as you've uploaded it, you push process and it goes. In other businesses, it might need 3 people to approve within a banking system. So there's definitely bits and pieces that still need to be worked out as we move towards the new payments platform and where different bits and pieces are going to sit. But there's definitely going to be lots of different bits and pieces where other efficiencies that you're not entirely aware of now will go off and start to disappear. So to go off and use another acronym, there's some businesses that need to have things called TNA, which are transaction authorities in place for people to be able to process super against their bank accounts. The new payments platform isn't going to need those types of things in place anymore. And those types of things, so to be able to get a TNA in place, it's a credit facility. So if a business doesn't need to have a TNA, then it may actually go off and impact their ability to get credit elsewhere. So there's lots of other flow-ons in that space.
So, Anne, you've been out talking to a lot of people about this. Have you got any other insights you want to add to this one?
Look, I think, I probably should mention here that my business partner, David Field, has been talking about the new payments platform for years and years. And I thought it was a myth because it just never actually appeared. And I used to, every time we talked about the NPP, I thought, oh yeah, right, okay. But it's here now, and it's working, right? And what we're seeing now is the banks that the employers use having to implement their end, which is all about, using pay-to agreements instead of direct debit facilities. It's using a pay-to agreement on the NPP. That's the equivalent for the direct debit facility. But using fast payments, sometimes you're in the banks are saying, fast payment, meaning they'll put the payment on the NPP for you. So there's all sorts of things appearing on the banks for the employers, and what Paul was talking about is the relationship between the employer and the bank and what their bank will allow. And we are seeing some issues associated with some banks are further ahead in their development of interfacing with NPP than others. Some have done a fantastic job. Others are a little laggard in it. But there's also the other end for the NPP. It's easy for us to get it through to the other end of the bank account. The other end is enabled for receiving NPP payments, right? But then there are systems at the other end that need to handle that data, and that can be an issue. So I suppose what I'm saying is it's working successfully, but we are still seeing the sort of new system teething issues that you would expect to see. They're not stopping processing, they're not stopping the work happening, but we are seeing people adapting to the new payments platform at both the employer end and the superannuation end.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. And we should shout out to David, who's always been an advocate of the MPP and faster payments and Payday Super as well. So thank you, David. We appreciate all you do within the industry as well. We have started to get some questions come through, but I think we were talking about in the beginning as well around, this instant gratification world that we're living in. Do you, and Paul, I'll ask you about this as well, do you expect real-time payments will have an impact on employee satisfaction?
It's going to be an item that's going to need to be managed. So there's a couple of little things that I'm going to go off and sort of and get people to start thinking about when they're processing payroll. So for the most part, the real-time payments with super is going to go off and get it to the super fund, and the super funds will still take a day or two. Depending on the super fund, it might take a little longer to make it appear in someone's super account. But payment of wages through the new payments platform is going to go off and make your payroll processes really transparent. Okay, if you don't run payroll until 6 o'clock, okay, and do it really, really late, your employees are going to know. Okay, if you run payroll at 10 o'clock every morning, okay, and you push the button and the funds are in their bank account at 10 o'clock every morning, okay, but then 1 week when you run payroll, you've got a whole heap of other stuff floating around and you don't get to it until late, okay, that type of experience for an employee may go and impact their satisfaction. So I would go off and recommend that people who are running payroll get a standard time that they're going to go off and push the button and have the funds go off and move, regardless of them doing the rest of their payroll processes, so that their employees don't get a false expectation that the funds are going to be in at a specific time during the day. I also think that it's going to go off and impact some other things around the payroll processing for businesses. So technically, under the Fair Work guidelines, okay, you've got a date that you need to pay people. The real-time payments platform could theoretically mean a business pays at 11:59 p.m. and they meet their criteria because the money's going to be there at that time. I wouldn't recommend employers do that because you'll really annoy your employees. But there are some businesses that are processing their pay and putting the ABA file into the bank 3 days before. And I know that there's some fairly large businesses with multi-million-dollar payrolls, okay, that are doing that can now probably go off and process 2 days later. So those businesses are going to go off and get additional cash flow benefits from being able to go off and do their payments through the new platform.
I think they're good considerations, and it actually, Anne, I can see you've got yours off.
Yeah, look, I think this is, Paul's absolutely correct, of course, is that, the question is, when do you push the button? when do you make the pay? But we're developing a payment service sitting on the NPP right now, and has in it when you want the payment to be made. So it's pretty much an ABA file with a date time that you want to process on the new payments platform, so that from a payroll operator's point of view, they can get everything ready and hit the button and go home and know that it's going to happen at that time on the new payments platform, and that everyone will pay. Because I think, Susie, you were saying the other day, 96% of personal accounts are NPP enabled now. So for payment of wages and salaries, of course, that's brilliant. And it can be timed. And I agree with you that there's often a little bit of leeway of when is the pay ready to actually pay, and when do we normally pay. Those are business rules that people will make for themselves. But it will mean a lot higher employee satisfaction. And if I can throw something else in there about the payment of wages and salaries that we heard this week from a client who said that, asked the question, well, if your new payment service, the employee's given you the wrong bank details and it bounces and the money comes back into our account because it's automatically refunded back in, we can't tell who it's for. We've just got the amount from the bank doesn't give us the details we need to identify the employee. And that's one of the things that the new payment platform and everything, you've got a far more control of the details to give back to the employer, so that they can correct that employee's pay. So there are, it will be a better service than BEX in this particular environment.
Yeah, not to mention you'll get that response much quicker that it was the incorrect bank account. So sorry, Paul, I didn't mean to cut you off.
Yeah, I was going to say, I love that item in regards to the incorrect bank account details. It's going to become a thing of the past for people running payroll. So you'll gather an employee's pay to details, which is effectively their BSB and account number under the new payments platform. But from that point on, okay, the employee has the ability to change where that is linked within their own banking system. So if they decide to move from bank A to bank B, they don't have to tell you as an employer, okay, that they're changing bank and to update the details and for you to have a form and approval process and other risk and audit items around it. The employee just changes it and transfers their pay ID between banks, and you don't have to worry about that piece of admin anymore. That's one of the great things that's going to come out of this, is that admin time is going to be saved within payroll teams. So,
loving the self-service without all of the other box ticking. What's it? T crossing and I dotting. Now, look, we've got a few questions coming in. I'm going to bring some of those up. One is, as people in the payroll super industry, oh, here we go. Here's another one that's come up. Do you think Payday Super will have similar cash flow considerations for smaller businesses, having to pay weekly rather than at the end of the quarter? Who am I going to go to that?
I was going to say, this is an interesting one because the ATO have actually been out talking to a large number of businesses, and a lot of their feedback from the smaller end of town is that they would actually prefer to be able to manage the cash flow with the payroll than having a great big payment at the end of a quarter. Okay, so based on ATO modelling, they've got items floating around in that space saying that the smaller businesses are after it. I have seen some other data out of other software providers in the market going off and saying that it will have an adverse impact on smaller businesses who may not have the cash to pay it at the same time. So I think this is going to be something which businesses will go through a pain process as it rolls out, and it'll be interesting to see if the DSPs with some data are right, or if the ATO's feedback is right in that space. So it's a hard one to go off and answer as it stands.
Yeah. I think once again, you go, Anne, sorry.
Sorry. Yeah, look, we've been talking to bookkeepers and software developers and everything, of course, with our new super system for this specific reason for Payday Super. And the bookkeepers are saying they are moving their small clients through to monthly super now in preparation for having to move to Payday, because, in other words, they're taking the couple of years we've got before it comes in to move from quarterly to monthly. And then the step from monthly to Payday is a lot smaller. So we know that there's movement in that area. But the fact is they won't have a choice. It's correct. It will affect their cash flow. They currently have that cash for up to 3 months. They will have to pay it with every pay run. And unfortunately, there is no right of reply or anything like that. It's mandated. So and the ATO wants to make sure that super is being paid. They're absolute demons on trying to chase down where super is not being paid. And a 3-month window, even a monthly window, doesn't give them time to pick it up. So will it affect cash flow? Yes. Move to monthly now. If you're doing quarterly, move to monthly now, so the pain isn't so great.
And that's good. And I must say there was another question that could be part of the response as well. They were saying, Anne, with AusEddy's new real-time super solution over the MPP, what are you hearing from your customers in terms of them wanting to use this solution, and what benefits they think they will deliver in terms of efficiency gains?
Okay, so we went live in October last year with our new Payday Super, real-time super payments. And we have a number of clients now paying each month, usually at this point in time. And they, the last one, the first couple, you kind of hold people's hand, you make sure everything is going smoothly. We're busy checking, of course, everything is running smoothly on that. But this week, one of our clients did their super run on the 26th, which a couple of days ago. We didn't know because, of course, it's automated self-serve. They just went and did it. And they used to pay on the 16th of each month. And they're now paying on the 26th. And they're comfortable and confident that if they pay on the 26th, that the funds are going to be there. So I think that what we're seeing is that it'll be a little bit of, seeing is believing. This is new technology. But what we're seeing is that the ease of use with the pay-to agreement, some are doing pay-to agreement, some of them are transferring funds for distribution on the new payments platform. But the pay-to agreement, of course, is just set and forget. Upload your data to us and, assuming there's no errors in it, Bob's your uncle. The funds get taken out of their bank account and distributed to the super funds, and it's all over in seconds. So it's very impressive. It's fun to watch, but it doesn't take very long.
Yeah, it's a good show, not a long show, isn't it, Anne? Mm-hmm. I've seen some upvotes coming from Joel Davis, has asked us a question here. Running an ABA is free. What are your thoughts on introducing a new fee for these types of payments, Paul?
This is a really interesting one. So people go off and think that processing an ABA file is free, but it's not. The banks are just really good at hiding the fees for processing them. You'll generally find that for most banks, the retail price for processing a line in an ABA file is around about 20 cents. So as you are going off and processing and you've got 100 employees, it is going off and costing you something. It's just that you can't see nice and clearly where those fees are. The new payments platform at the moment, for most of the providers, is a little bit more expensive, but we will hopefully see that those fees will come down, and we'll see where the banks go off and have different bits and pieces depending on where they sit. So it is actually a myth of where it is. There is going to be some slight differences in price, but you're more than likely going to be able to see what the price is as you're processing now. And I'd go off and say that the benefits of being able to go off and process real time are going to offset any of those differences. So, and I think you're going off and seeing some things around pricing at the moment.
Yeah, look, when obviously we were working with Zepto last year in the development of the software, and we were talking about the fees on the NPP and how to sell, charging clients for processing the payments, etc., and coming up with pricing. You know what it's like in business. You've got to make sure that you're providing a great service and it's within people's budgets, etc. And this question of selling against something that's free is always a bit of a challenge. But what we've found, of course, is that the automated self-serve, the kind of ease of use is where employers are looking for. And of course, we're talking to a lot of payroll software providers to build into their payroll the button of pay super, and the system goes away and does it for them. And that ease of use, rather than having to, output files and go and upload files to third-party portals and get an ABA file and go to the bank and upload the ABA file. And there's quite a bit of processing that's going on that could be eliminated, making it much easier. And the fact that on the new payments platform, you get confirmed payments. You know that the payment has been received by the super fund. You know that you've met your compliance requirements. That is really important. And the BEX system does not give you any confirmation that your payment has been received. You just assume it's left your bank account. As far as you're concerned, it must have been received by the super fund. With the new payments platform, there's this confirmation of receipt of the money, and you can point to that and know that you've met your compliance requirements. We're finding that is very attractive. The ease of use, the confirmation of the payments, the speed of processing, all of those things are something that business is looking for.
And I think we also touched on a lot of the operational inefficiencies that are manual, that are humans doing all of this work as well. And I think we need to be thinking about those sort of things and the costs of those to our business when we're doing a comparison, not just on a light item as well. So I think I was just looking in the chat as well, and I'd missed a comment in there before as well, that I think was one on one of our prior questions around. David was suggesting that employees implement Payday Super before 2026 in starting to gradually pay one or two funds on Payday well before 2026. So I know, Anne, you were saying that some people were reducing the cycle, and instead of doing it quarterly, we're trying monthly. That was another one to add in along the way. I think, Paul, seeing you're a compliance expert, I should ask you the compliance question while we're here as well. What sort of compliance and reporting considerations should businesses be aware of or start thinking about now in helping them get ready?
I was going to say that all of their existing compliance items are going to be in place. Some things will get removed. So as I said, having to go off and provide your auditors with proof that you have to change bank accounts, that'll become a thing of the past. But you will still need to go off and deal with auditors reviewing what's going through your banks and processing and those types of things. But probably for the most part is that it's simply going to change. Those items are going to be still required, but you're going to have somewhere else to go off and show the information as it pushes around. So the real benefit I see in this space, though, is that you're not going to have as many items whereby, as Anne said, you can't prove that it didn't get there. So in regards to super surcharge lodgements and whatever else, you'll be able to turn around and go, I made the payment here, it got there. So you will have more items in those spaces and a little less to do. It's just going to be a bit different how you go off and do them. So.
And
Okay.
Susie, can I mention relative to that too, that the Paul's been on the payday forums that I've been on with the ATO, and there's quite a lot of, you have to understand what the ATO is trying to achieve here, because there's a lot of talk about penalties and things for non-payment or not payment within correct period and incorrect payments and things like that. And, you know, that's where the ATO is going. They are looking to make sure that people pay their super and they pay the right amount and they pay it on time, right? And they want to put penalties in place if you don't. So it's really important that employers have good payroll systems that give them accurate amounts of super being calculated, and uses systems that allow them to meet the compliance requirements of timing and payment, etc. So I just think that, you know, I was a bit shocked about the amount of time that was in the documentation on penalties and things. I'm thinking, hey, let's just focus on getting paid and we'll worry about if it's accurate later. Right? So yeah, we need to understand where the ATO is coming with this new payday super. It's not just the timing, it's also the accuracy and etc. So it will be necessary for employers to make sure they have a good payroll system that they can rely on, that is going to be interfacing with appropriate services to give them the satisfaction that they've met compliance requirements.
Absolutely. There's nothing more. It's quite an emotive subject, isn't it, for all of us individually, getting paid correctly and on time. So I can understand there's a bit of a big stick wielding it from behind as well. So I've just been looking at the time, and time flies when you're having fun. We're nearly at time. So I was just going to ask one more question, Paul. I know that DSPANS is offering working groups around real-time payments and payroll. So can you just tell us a little bit about this in case people would like to lodge into those?
Yeah, so I can see we've got a mix of people in the webinar today that are software providers as well as others. If you are a software provider, DSPANS is they've created working groups, generally meeting on a monthly basis as we work through the different steps that a software provider would need to go through to be able to go and implement the new payments platform. It's going to be touching on interactions with banks, messaging items that you need to do, and I'll say that's going to continue on for quite a while until everyone's been able to go off and deliver it within their system. So it's a DSPANS is an interesting space. I'll say we're all competitors, but we all want to go off and make sure that things like this, which are being rolled out on a broad basis, okay, are usable and able to be implemented. So we do work together in that space. So if you're a member, okay, go off and drop into the forums and watch the newsletters. If you're not, you can go and look at the DSPANS website and get details of how to join and how to become members, or you can reach out to me on LinkedIn and I'm quite happy to go off and have a chat. So.
Good job. Now, Anne, someone snuck a question in here that I think we might send to you, which
was...
Before
you do that, Susie, just on by the way, I haven't actually said, but our service that I've talked about, we work with the payroll system developers for that. So it's not a payroll system or anything. We provide a service which we work with payroll providers, all right, which is why DSPANS is so important. Sorry, Susie, what was...
No, thank you for that clarification. I was going to say someone has snuck in a question on what happens if an overpayment of super occurred and it can't be clawed back in the following pay run.
I might sneak in there because it's less of an item in regards to the payments platform. there are actually rules in place in regards to what and how you are allowed to go off and recover funds from an employee. So I'm going to go off and push that one off to go off and speak with either the APA or TAPS in regards to how you are allowed to go off and claw money back from an employee if you have actually gone off and overpaid items.
Good response, Paul. Thank you for that. Now, we have run out of time. I can see there's still questions coming in, so I'm sorry if we didn't quite get through anything. Please feel free to send any questions. We'll keep a track of those, and if we've got your details, we can hopefully come back and answer that for you. But I'd like to say a huge thank you to our very kind speakers today for giving up your time. For Anne and Paul, really, really appreciate it. And we appreciate everyone for dialing in today. We do realise that it's a long weekend, and it was a bit cheeky of us putting something in on the last day before a 4-day weekend. So we hope everyone has a really happy and safe break over the Easter period, and we'll look forward to talking to you in our next webinar. Thank you very much. Thank you.